She looked me straight in the eye, didn't blink, didn't flinch, and said, "We're letting you go." Budget cuts. I still had the medical bracelet on my wrist. The chemo port was under my collarbone. She didn't even ask how I was feeling. I had given this place 15 years of my life, and in return, they gave me a cardboard box. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I just stood there, numb, trying to breathe, because I knew the second I walked out that door, I wouldn't be able to afford treatment. 3 weeks earlier, I had been sitting in a too-cold doctor's office, staring at a poster about liver function when the word oncology entered my life for the first time. Stage 2. Treatable, but aggressive. The doctor's voice was steady, but everything else spun. My hands trembled on the clipboard. I remember the pen rolling off the counter. I didn't pick it up. When I walked out, I didn't cry. Not right away. I drove home in silence, passing my kids' school, the gas station. I always stopped at the sandwich shop, where they knew my order. The world didn't change, but I had. That night, I told my 2 kids the truth. Kind of. I said Mom's going to need to rest more. Some medicine might make me tired, but I'll be okay. They hugged me. My youngest, Ava, said, "I'll help cook dinner, Mommy." I waited until they were asleep before I collapsed in the laundry room and sobbed into a stack of towels. I informed my manager the next morning. Her name was Dana. Blonde bob-tailored blazers, always 2 steps ahead in the meeting room. We weren't close, but we had mutual respect. Or so I thought. I requested a temporary schedule adjustment. I explained I'd need a few days off here and there for treatment. Dana nodded slowly. Too slowly. "Of course, Clara. We support you," she said, smiling too tightly. "But we do have some big proposals coming up. Maybe talk to HR first?" That was Tuesday. By Friday, HR sent me a bland email titled "Follow-up." The bullet points were clean and heartless. "We are assessing role viability in Q3. Resource realignment. Let's discuss options next week." Options. That word stuck in my throat like a stone. I went to my first chemo session the following Monday. 3 hours of fluorescent lighting needles and slow-dripping IV bags. The woman next to me, maybe in her 70s, handed me a lemon drop and said, "They help with the taste." I didn't even know chemo had a taste. She smiled gently and told me, "First one's always the hardest." When I got home, my inbox had 12 unread emails, the subject line that made my hands go cold. Restructuring notification. Confidential. I didn't open it until the next morning. I already knew what it would say. By the time Dana called me into her office, flanked by an HR rep I'd never seen before, I had already printed out my last paycheck. She didn't even wait for me to sit. "We're going in a different direction. Cost cutting. Nothing personal." Nothing personal. I didn't argue. I didn't cry in that room. I boxed up my desk, my mug, my mouse pad with Ava's handprint, the framed award from the client presentation I had led in 2019. The security guard gave me a kind smile as I walked out. He didn't know. Nobody did. I cried alone. Not for the job, for the insurance, for the co-pays, for the bills I hadn't even seen yet, for my kids who thought Mom just needed a little more rest, for the way Dana never looked back. But I didn't scream. I didn't post on social media. I did one thing. I called my friend Tanya and asked if she still had the number of that lawyer she mentioned last year, the one who didn't scare easy. Tanya didn't hesitate. "I'll text it to you right now, Clara. Call her. Today." I saved the contact under one word: hope. I didn't tell the kids that night. I said I was just tired. That work had been stressful, that I needed a few days to rest and reset. I microwaved some leftover pasta, sat with them while they watched cartoons, and smiled through what felt like broken glass inside my chest. When Ava handed me her drawing, a lopsided cat with a pink heart, I nearly broke down. She'd written in crayon, "For Mommy, the strongest person ever." Strong. If only she knew. I waited until the weekend to sit them down. No school, no distractions. We sat on the couch, just the 3 of us. I held their little hands and told them the truth in pieces. "I'm going to need some medicine that might make me feel sick sometimes," I said gently. "But I have doctors helping me, and I'm doing everything I can to get better." They didn't ask about work. They didn't ask about money. They asked if I'd still be there to tuck them in every night. That was the only thing that mattered to them. And that became the only thing that mattered to me. But reality doesn't wait for you to catch your breath. By Monday, the unemployment forms were staring me down. I opened the state benefits portal, and that's when I saw it. Separation, reason, performance concerns. My pulse spiked. I reread the line 6 times. Performance. I had emails of praise, awards, end-of-year bonuses. Hell, Dana herself called me a cornerstone of this team just last Christmas. What performance concerns? It wasn't enough they let me go. Now they were rewriting the reason. I called HR. A polite voice answered, dripping with detachment. We have internal documentation supporting the separation. I can't speak to the specifics, but I assure you this was a business decision. I asked for the documents. They declined. I hung up. Then I opened the contact Tanya had sent me. Monica Reyes-esque. Her firm had no fancy website, just a phone number and a line that read, "Employment law, we handle the ugly stuff." I left a voicemail. My voice cracked halfway through. I wasn't sure what to expect. She called me back in less than 2 hours. "Ms. Benton," she said, voice crisp and calm. "Yes," I whispered. "This is Monica Reyes." Tanya gave me a heads up. "I understand you're dealing with a possible wrongful termination." I told her everything. The diagnosis, the meeting, the email, the HR stonewall. She didn't interrupt. She didn't say, "I'm sorry." She just listened. Then she asked one question that made my stomach turn. "Did they know about your condition before they terminated you?" "Yes," I replied. "I told Dana and HR. In writing. I can forward the emails." There was a long pause. Then Monica said in a tone I'll never forget, "Then they made a serious mistake." I felt something shift inside me. A quiet steadiness. The beginning of a spine I hadn't felt in weeks. Monica explained everything clearly. My rights under the Family and Medical Leave Act, how disability protections work, what employers can and can't do. She used words like retaliation and discrimination and document trail. First step, she said, is gathering everything. Emails, memos, performance reviews, any communication with HR or your boss. I opened my laptop. My fingers didn't hesitate. If they were going to pretend I didn't matter, I was going to show them I did. The next day, I opened my email archive. Subject lines jumped out like ghosts. "Clara saved us this quarter, amazing job. Need your brain on this? You're the best we've got. Appreciate you staying late again." But what chilled me most was an email from Dana dated 2 days before my diagnosis. "Let's discuss restructuring Clara's role, maybe redundant post Q3. It was vague, but it smelled off. Too convenient, too clean. I flagged it. Then I found the one that mattered, my message to HR subject, medical disclosure. Time off request. Dated, stamped, direct. I forwarded it to Monica. She replied within minutes, perfect. "Save everything. This is how we begin." That night, I slept a little deeper. Not much, but enough to dream without waking in a panic. I wasn't just a patient anymore. I wasn't just a mom trying to hold it together. I was a woman with a case, and I was done crying alone. You don't give 16 years of your life to a place and forget it overnight. Even when they betray you, the memories don't disappear, they haunt you. I remember my first day at Strathmore Solutions, like it was yesterday. Back then, we were a team of 12 crammed into a shared office above a strip mall. Our break room was just a microwave and a dusty coffee pot. No one had private offices, no one wore suits, but we were building something, or at least it felt like we were. I stayed late. I said yes to everything. I didn't take my vacation days the first 5 years. Back then, that felt like loyalty. Now I know better. I can still picture the winter of 2012. Snow was falling, hard roads, shut down, schools closed. The entire city was hunkered down under a blizzard warning. But we had a government contract proposal due by midnight, and I lived closest to the office. Dana had just joined the company, still finding her footing. I stayed through the storm 8 hours straight. Finished the layout, proofed the cost analysis, uploaded the files. That bid won us a $4 million project. Dana brought me a cup of hot cocoa the next morning and said, You're the kind of person companies are built around." I believed her. There were awards. Not huge ones, but enough to make me feel seen. Employee of the Quarter 3 years running. A plaque with my name now collecting dust in my garage. There were office birthdays, inside jokes, and Slack holiday secret Santas, where I always gave more thoughtful gifts than I got back. There were late nights cleaning up Dana's messy presentations, and early mornings jumping in for coworkers who overslept. Once I even drove a client to the airport when their Uber canceled. It wasn't in my job description, but neither was so much of what I did. And I never complained. I thought loyalty earned protection. Turns out it just made me a softer target. After I was let go, I started reaching out. I emailed a few people I thought were friends. Not for help, just to say hi to see if anyone else had been affected by the layoffs. No response. Not even a sorry to hear. The silence hurt more than I expected. Then I saw Dana post a smiling photo on LinkedIn proud to announce our restructured team is leaner and stronger than ever. Leaner. That word twisted like a knife. I wasn't a name. I wasn't a person. I was excess weight. The worst part, they told unemployment I was let go for performance issues. Performance issues. I opened my last 3 annual reviews. All marked exceeds expectations. One included this line, "Clara is a cornerstone of our proposal team. We rely on her experience daily." I printed that page and pinned it above my desk at home. Not to gloat, not to build a case, but because I needed to remember that once they saw my worth. And now they were pretending not to. I told Monica about the unemployment claim. She asked me to forward the documentation. After she read it, she said flatly, "That's false reporting. They're trying to cover themselves." She explained how employers sometimes reframe terminations to avoid liability, but in doing so, they often contradict written records. That could help us if we played it right. One night, while sorting old emails, I found something I had forgotten about. A forwarded message from Dana's assistant. It included a Slack screenshot, a joke someone had made in a private channel about me being out of commission for months. It read, "Guess we'll need someone who can actually show up, no offense to Clara." There were laughing emojis. Dana had liked the comment. At the time, I brushed it off. Office banter, I told myself. Now I saved it in a new folder. Evidence, culture, and attitudes. A few days later, I got a message from someone I hadn't expected. Megan, a junior writer I used to mentor. "Hey, Clara. It said I heard what happened. I'm really sorry. I just wanted you to know it wasn't right." I thanked her. And after some back and forth, I asked gently, "Did anyone say anything after I was let go?" She hesitated. Then wrote, "They told the team your output had declined and that you'd refused to adapt to new workflows." We all knew that was bull. I asked if she'd be willing to write a statement. She said yes. It was the first crack in their wall. I wasn't angry all the time. Mostly, I was tired. Tired from treatment, tired from smiling for my kids, tired of being alone with the truth. But when Megan sent over her signed statement, along with the date Dana had made, that decline comment, I felt something stronger than fatigue. Resolve. They wanted this to fade, to become another HR file with no face, no fight, no consequence. But I wasn't going to let them. I printed everything. Emails, reviews, notes, comments, statements. I bought a red folder from the drugstore. On the front, in black Sharpie, I wrote 2 words. Not done. I slid the folder across Monica's desk the next morning. She opened it, flipped through a few pages, and looked up at me. Her eyes lit with something like quiet fire. "Clara," she said, "we're going to make this count." The first thing Monica did was schedule a formal intake interview with her associate Marcus. He looked younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, but he had a calm, analytical way of speaking that put me at ease. Every sentence was precise, every pause, intentional. We sat across from each other in the conference room of their modest downtown office, a carafe of water and legal pads between us. He asked for everything, emails, timelines, names, comments, even vague memories. I brought the red folder, and I brought my memory sharper than they'd assumed. Monica later told me something that stuck with me. They expect you to be too tired, too distracted, too scared. That's why most people don't fight back. That's when I realized it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everyone like me, everyone who'd been tossed aside while vulnerable, everyone who didn't fight because the system was built to exhaust them. I wouldn't be silent, not this time. Monica's team began building what she called a pattern map. They traced the timeline from my medical disclosure, to the vague restructuring emails, to the shift in tone from HR, to the performance mischaracterization in the unemployment report, to the internal communications and Slack screenshots. And then she showed me something chilling. They had found 3 other employees in the last 2 years who had been let go shortly after medical disclosures. One had suffered a stroke. One had been diagnosed with lupus. One was pregnant. Each was told the same phrase, realignment due to budget constraints. Monica folded her hands. This is more than just your case now, Clara. We filed a complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC. It was official, on paper, timed, stamped. It meant we were serious, and the company couldn't just ignore it. 2 weeks later, Strathmore's legal team responded with a letter full of denial distancing and corporate buzzwords. We are deeply committed to a safe and inclusive workplace. We categorically deny any retaliation. The employee's departure was purely operational. But they didn't know what we had. Not yet. Monica's firm filed a formal notice of potential legal action. And then she did something I hadn't expected. She told me to take a break. You've done everything you need to for now, she said. Let us do the lifting. I didn't know what to do with the quiet, the space. So I cooked more, sat with my kids longer, read books instead of articles on legal precedent. I even painted for the first time in years, just a small canvas of a sunflower. Ava said it looked happy and brave. I smiled and whispered to myself, just like her mom. One day, while grocery shopping, I saw Dana. She was by the self-checkout holding a basket of kale and oat milk. She didn't see me, or maybe she did and pretended not to. I stood still for a moment, and then I looked her in the eyes. Not with hatred, not with fear, just quiet, steady defiance. She looked away first. Monica called me a week later. They've requested mediation, she said. What does that mean? It means they know we're serious and they're worried what a courtroom might reveal. She was calm, but I heard the edge of satisfaction in her voice. They want to talk settlement. Part of me wanted to say no, wanted to drag it out in front of a judge, make them answer publicly. But another part of me, the part still going to chemo, still tucking my kids in at night, still measuring energy in teaspoons, wanted closure. Wanted it to end on my terms. So we prepared. Monica walked me through every possible outcome, every trick they might try, every offer they'd lowball first. You'll go in calm, she said, because we're walking in with truth. And they're walking in with fear. I nodded. For the first time since it all began, I felt powerful. The mediation took place in a beige conference room at a neutral downtown office. No branding, no windows. Just a long table, some lukewarm coffee, and 2 sides with very different reasons for being there. I wore a navy blue blouse, subtle makeup, simple gold earrings. I wanted to look composed, not flashy, not fragile, just solid. Monica sat beside me, calm and unreadable. Across from us, 2 company lawyers I'd never met, and a representative from HR. Dana didn't show. Of course not. The mediator opened with ground rules. Then their lead attorney began. Strathmore Solutions acknowledges the difficulty of this situation and regrets any misunderstanding that may have occurred during Ms. Benton's departure. A misunderstanding. That was the word they chose, like I had tripped over a policy. Monica leaned in and replied, Ms. Benton's medical records performance reviews, internal communications, and the timing of her termination show a clear and deliberate pattern. We're here because what happened wasn't a misunderstanding, it was illegal. She slid the red folder across the table. They opened it, slowly. For 20 minutes they read in silence. Emails, reviews, Slack screenshots, witness statements. Their faces didn't move, but I saw it in their posture, the subtle shift from control to calculation. When they reached the unemployment form where they had cited performance decline, Monica added gently, Here's her actual review from the same month marked outstanding and signed by your own executive. One of the lawyers cleared his throat. They knew. Then came the first offer. It was polite, carefully worded, dressed up with legal decorum. A few months' pay, an NDA, no admission of wrongdoing. Monica didn't even blink. We're not here for hush money, she said. Then she laid out our terms. Full compensation for lost wages. Coverage of medical costs during the lapse period. A written acknowledgement of wrongful termination. No NDA. A company-wide review of termination procedures. They asked for a recess. We left the room, went to the hallway. Monica smiled. They blinked. During the break, I sat on a bench and exhaled deeply. I thought about the first night I cried in my bathroom, afraid I wouldn't be able to afford groceries. I thought about my daughter's crayon drawing. I thought about how much power they thought they had, how easily they discarded me. And now they were scrambling? Back inside, they returned with a revised offer. Closer, but still guarded. We're willing to discuss partial medical reimbursement and 6-month severance, the HR rep said. We'd prefer confidentiality. Monica folded her hands. No NDA. And the language needs to reflect accountability, not ambiguity. More whispers, more glances. Then they made the mistake of asking me a question. Ms. Benton, what is it you really want from this process? I looked at them. My voice was calm. I want to know that the next woman sitting across from you, the next mother, the next patient, the next person with a life beyond your spreadsheets, won't be discarded like trash the second she becomes inconvenient. Silence. Even the mediator paused before speaking. After 2 more rounds of discussion, they agreed. Full back pay and damages. Medical cost reimbursement. A signed letter acknowledging an error in employment handling and timing. No NDA. It wasn't just about money, it was about being seen, being heard, being human again. After signing, one of their lawyers looked up and said, "You were very composed, Miss Benton." I looked him in the eyes. Composed doesn't mean unaffected. And then I stood up and left taller than when I walked in. Outside, Monica handed me a copy of the agreement in a white envelope. "This doesn't erase what happened," she said, "but it ends on your terms." I nodded. That's all I ever wanted. I walked a few blocks before calling my kids. I told them I'd be home early, that we'd order pizza and start a puzzle we hadn't finished. I didn't tell them why I was smiling. But I smiled all the way home. The first few mornings after the mediation felt strange. No meetings, no inbox floods, no passive-aggressive Slack messages asking if I had a minute to chat. Just quiet. At first, the stillness made me restless, like I'd missed something, like I needed to log in and prove something to someone. But slowly, I began to breathe differently. I was no longer someone's convenience, no longer invisible, no longer expendable. A few weeks later, Monica called me. "They've updated their internal policies," she said. "A new medical disclosure protocol, mandatory sensitivity training, and terminations involving health-related cases now require third-party review." I was stunned. "They didn't admit wrongdoing publicly," Monica added, "but those changes don't happen unless someone forces them." And I had. Quietly, without screaming, without dragging them on social media, just with truth and tenacity. Around the same time, I got an unexpected email. It was from Jillian, someone I barely knew, from another department, accounting, I think. She wrote, "I just wanted to say thank you. I was going through chemo last year and I kept my head down because I was afraid. But what you did, it gave a lot of us courage. We all heard, even if they pretended we didn't." That email meant more than any legal win, because it meant I hadn't just reclaimed my voice, I'd helped others find theirs. I applied for a part-time consultancy gig a month later. Nothing fancy, just a small firm that worked with nonprofits. The interview was warm, kind. They didn't ask about gaps or medical history, just about what I loved most in proposal writing. I told them shaping words that help people do something good. They hired me that afternoon. It wasn't about starting over. It was about continuing on my terms. One day, Ava came home from school with an essay titled, "The Strongest Woman I Know." She'd written about me. She didn't talk about lawsuits or terminations or HR. She talked about how I kept reading bedtime stories during chemo, how I packed her lunch even on my worst days, how I painted a sunflower and hung it above our dining table. I cried, not from pain, not from grief, from pride. Sometimes I still wake up thinking I've got to defend myself again. But then I walk past the red folder on my shelf, the one I kept as a reminder. And I smile, because I know now I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't difficult. I wasn't weak. I was brave enough to document what others ignored, strong enough to endure, and wise enough to strike when the time was right. A few of my old coworkers reached out over time. Most just wanted to say they were sorry for not speaking up. I told them it was okay, that I understood, that fear does strange things. But privately, I reminded myself, when things go wrong, there's always someone watching, waiting to see what silence wins. And someone else, quietly preparing for truth to roar. It wasn't a press conference. There were no headlines, just a quiet newsletter. A month later, Strathmore Solutions released their quarterly update to stakeholders, buried in the last paragraph, after graphs and charts and fluffy quotes about innovation, was a single sentence. Following internal reviews, we've instituted new employee health protection policies to ensure transparency and ethical standards moving forward. They didn't say my name, but they didn't have to. Everyone who knew, knew. I didn't frame the settlement letter. I didn't celebrate with champagne. Instead, I did something simple. I took my kids to the zoo. We stood for 10 minutes watching the elephants. Ava pointed out how the youngest one never left its mother's side. And for a moment, I stopped thinking about diagnosis schedules or past emails or courtrooms. Just the sun, my children, and the rhythm of a world still moving. That fall, I began mentoring younger women in the industry, those new to contracts and compliance, those still learning how to speak up in meetings. One of them, a soft-spoken analyst named Karina, asked me over coffee, "How did you stay calm through all that?" I told her the truth. I didn't. I cried, I broke, I doubted myself, but I also documented. And I waited. And when the time came, I moved with quiet precision. She nodded slowly. That's stronger than loud strength. Exactly. Every once in a while, I drive past the Strathmore building. I don't do it to gloat. I do it to remind myself how far I've walked since then. That the version of me who sat in the HR office holding back tears, she didn't vanish. She evolved. I also returned to painting. Nothing grand, just little things. Still life on cheap canvas, mostly flowers, always sunflowers. The kind that turn toward the light even when storms try to bend them. There's one more thing I kept from all of this. Not legal, not financial. A voice recording. It's Dana from that day in the office, laughing awkwardly and saying, "Come on, Clara, don't be so sensitive. It's just budget stuff. It's only 5 seconds long. I've never played it for anyone, but I keep it. Because it reminds me, they thought I'd break. They thought I'd fade. They thought I'd walk away quietly. But I didn't. I walked forward, holding truth, carrying proof, and refusing to let fear write the last page of my story. My name is Clara Benton. I'm a mother, a cancer survivor, and the reason a multi-million-dollar company changed its policies. Not because I screamed, not because I threatened, but because I wrote everything down and waited for the right moment to let it speak. That was enough. If Clara's story moved you, you're not alone. Too many people have been silenced, overlooked, or discarded when they needed support the most. But truth, when held quietly and bravely, has a way of speaking louder than injustice ever could. If you've ever faced something similar, share your story in the comments. You never know who needs to hear it today. And if you believe in dignity, justice, and strength in silence, share and subscribe to stand with voices like Clara's. This isn't just storytelling, it's truth-telling.